should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Well, His eye is on the sparrow, and I know.
Well, good afternoon. I'm David McMaster, the lead minister at Eastminster United Church in Belleville, Ontario. We're living in the midst of a pandemic, and they are strange and interesting times. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "May you not live in interesting times," and there are many of us, I think, who would not or would prefer to be living at other times just at the moment. In Canada, where we are, so far there have been 285,000 cases of COVID throughout the country. 10,816 people have lost their lives, and our hearts go out to those and their families, and it really is a most difficult virus and difficult times for them, and we think about you. Numbers are rising in Ontario. As of yesterday, there were 1,535 cases in Ontario. We have only 2 in our area. The Quinte area has been lucky and had perhaps less than other parts of the country. But this looks like it's going to be a difficult winter. I was thinking a few weeks ago that it might be useful to have a chat with people locally, maybe not so locally, maybe some far away, and ask them how they are dealing with the COVID situation and how their churches are dealing with it. And so over the next number of weeks, maybe months, I'm going to put together a few Eastminster chats videos to share with you. And the first one, I had the idea of interacting with someone I don't know, but she is the minister of the church that I grew up in. And so here is number 1, Eastminster Chats. It's with the Reverend Cheryl Patterson in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Thank you.
For doing this.
No.
I'm going to start with an easy question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, you've already said my name's Cheryl. I'm a Methodist minister for the Methodist Church in Ireland. I'm trying to be conscious to speak a little bit slower so that people can understand my accent okay. But yeah, so I grew up in Northern Ireland. I've lived here most of my life. I went into training for ministry about 7 years ago and have been out on circuit serving for the last 5 years. First 2 years, I served in the Republic of Ireland in a very rural congregation, farming congregation in County Wexford. And then I'm in my 3rd year here in Glenburn Methodist Church, which is in East Belfast. So pretty new to ministry, but have worked for the church for probably more years than I want to count up. So I was a youth worker for about 10 years before I came in to serve or train as ordained ministry. But yeah, I'm not married, no children, but have 2 adorable nieces who I love very much, and thankful to, at the minute, be stationed somewhere close to my family. So is that plenty?
Great, thank you. Well, so as I mentioned, Glenburn is the church that I grew up in, and back in the day it was filled with young people, and I think over the years, like many churches, the congregation has aged a bit. Tell us a little bit about Glenburn. I actually remember when the current sanctuary was being built.
Oh, wow.
When I was very young, we had to meet in the older building.
Yeah, so we still have those 2 buildings. We have the older buildings now are church halls, which is really widely used by organizations, but also community organizations and would take part and use those halls and those buildings as well. And we have our sanctuary building, which we use for worship and Bible study. Congregation pre-COVID, we probably would have had about 120 or so on a Sunday morning that would have gathered together to worship. Now the congregation, I suppose, is largely a older congregation. We've a small number of children that would come along with grandparents that would be our Sunday school, but not too many that would be teenagers, or we have a couple of ones that are early 20s, but then it would be sort of 40s, 50s, 60s, mostly 70s, 80s in our congregation. But a really faithful bunch of people, and who I'm very privileged to be able to minister to and come alongside. The church itself is located inside quite a large housing estate in East Belfast, so plenty of homes that we're able to engage with, but it's just finding how we do that well in this time and season is always a bit of a challenge for churches, but we're doing our best, I suppose. But and we're learning how to work better with other churches in the area and have better partnerships, because in Northern Ireland there's churches everywhere. On every street corner there's a church, so it's trying to learn a new way of working together in those churches. But the congregation in Glenburn are a really wonderful bunch of people who I'm very, very thankful for.
Okay, and I probably know some of the older folk there, but what's going on? What's going on in Northern Ireland now with the virus situation?
Yeah, so our obviously, as with everywhere in the world, COVID has impacted our day-to-day life quite significantly. The statistics at the moment aren't fabulous. The statistics for the UK are fairly bleak. Now, Northern Ireland is in a slightly better position than England, Scotland and Wales, and even more so than Ireland. So Northern Ireland kind of sits in the middle, and I think at the minute we have the least restrictions in comparison to those around us. But we're restricted in our household, so we're not allowed to go in and out of each other's homes. We have to, unless you're bubbling with one other household, you have to be outside only, which in winter in Northern Ireland is not easy to do. Retail shops for us are still open, but our hospitality industry has kind of been closed, and it's only takeaway only from restaurants or coffee shops. So all of those places where you could gather with each other, they're all closed. And close contact businesses are closed. So that's hairdressers, beauty salons, barbers, they're all closed for the period of a month. So we're 2 weeks into that month, and we're being told that everything's going to open up again on the 13th of November. But we'll wait and see. At present, our schools are able to gather and meet. They had an extended half-term break, but they started back again on Monday. And our churches are allowed to gather and meet on Sundays as long as we put restrictions into place. So as we gather on Sunday, we have to sit 2 meters apart from each other, and we have to wear masks for the duration of the service, which is a very different experience of worshipping together, covered in masks and visors, but it is good to gather. Hospitals over here are under pressure. At the minute, we're probably at about 96% occupancy of our hospitals. So the strain on the health services is, I suppose, why the restrictions are being put in place, so that we can try and protect that, and so we can try and protect the staff that are working there under a great deal of pressure. The situation for care homes is quite challenging. Most care homes won't allow visitors in, so there's a real separation from families for loved ones who are in care homes being looked after. They just can't get to see them or spend time with them. So it's a strange season. It's a frightening season. There's a lot of people very apprehensive about what's to come and about catching the virus. Our figures, we've had around about 40,000 people test positive, and we've had about 730 deaths by this point, which is lower in comparison to the rest of the UK and to Ireland. So both those places are in a stricter lockdown than we are, but it's not the figures that we want it to be. and we'd love to see a change in that as things reduce. But we wait to see what the next 2 weeks bring and whether the government will put stricter restrictions on us, or whether they will stick to what they're saying and release us into some sort of more normality that will probably still not be normal, but it'll feel a little bit more normal. So it's a strange experience for sure.
And what about the church? So I think earlier you were telling me that you'd closed down for a period. And what all are you doing as a church to get through this?
Yeah, so churches had to close in March when at the first lockdown. We weren't allowed to meet and gather together at all. So everything moved to online, and we had online services for that period of time. The government allowed churches to open from the end of June, but a lot of churches delayed that. So Glenburn, for example, we didn't open until the middle of August because we wanted just to see how things went with buildings, spaces being open again. So from August, we have opened on a Sunday morning, and we run 2 services so that we can facilitate everyone to come who wants to come within safe measures and social distancing. So we run those 2 services, but then we're also putting the sermon online for those who don't feel they want to come out to worship. And we also have a script then or 2 that can be printed off to be delivered to those who don't have access to the internet, but still want to feel a part of the worshipping community. So we're trying to make sure that everybody, even if we're together or we're apart, that we're sharing in the same thoughts and reflections on scripture and the same attitude of prayer, so that we still feel like we're a community that's together, even though we're scattered within our homes. So we're doing what we can. We're learning how to use Zoom. We're learning how to upload videos and do all sorts of things we never imagined we would have to do. But God is still good. So, we'll do what we can, and we know that God will still be at work in and through it.
Very good. Very, very similar in many ways to what we're dealing with here. Maybe the toughest question, where do you see this all going? And particularly for the church, do you think maybe, let's say, the autumn of next year is, in my mind, maybe when things might get going again. But what sort of state do you think the church will be in at that point? And will there be things you'll have to do that will be different?
That's kind of an impossible question to answer, because I suppose we don't know what tomorrow will bring, never mind next autumn. I suppose it can be easy to look and see the challenges that could lie to the church. And so currently those who are able to gather for worship, the numbers are still very small. And so it does make you ask questions of, will all those other people come back? Will we find a very depleted congregation when we're able to meet back together? Will we find ourselves in financial difficulty? Will we have engaged enough with our community that we still have those connections, or will those things be lost? And it can be easy to look at all those questions and think that it's quite bleak, and we don't know what's going to happen. But we can look at all those questions and actually try and put a spin on them to say, well, actually, it could be really exciting to not know what's going to come. So, yes, we're going to have to think differently. Yes, we're going to have to strip away some of the traditions and some of the things that we've held very preciously and tightly to, because those things just won't have a place anymore, or they won't work anymore. But there's an excitement that God can do something new, and we trust that God will still provide. We trust that God will still be at work in people's lives. We trust that God will still open opportunities and doors for us to connect with our community, if only we're brave enough to look for them, and if only we're brave enough to realize that they might look very different than we've ever done before. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm doing my best to cling to a hope in a God who has been faithful and who has revealed himself as faithful and good, and so will still be faithful and good next autumn. And regardless of what the church looks like, he will still be the same, and our calling is to faithfully follow. So yeah, it's okay that we don't know what it looks like, because there's an excitement in trusting that God will do what he has always done, and that God will be who he has always been. So we just need to keep pushing into how we know God and how we worship and how we pray, and come with a real openness to say, okay, God, take and use us, whatever that looks like. We're brave enough to do it because we're your body in this place. So may your kingdom come in it. So that's what I'm trying to cling to. I'm trying not to give in to the worries and the anxiety and the fear, because I don't think that's what God calls us to be. I think we're called to be a people of hope, not a people of fear, and a people who are ready to be in awe of what God can do, because God is awesome. And that's what we just need to keep focusing our minds on as much as we possibly can through all the uncertainty of the next few months, or perhaps a year, but hopefully not a year.
Well, those are encouraging words. I'm thinking of a message I spoke on. I'm actually doing a series just now on Philippians, and Philippians 1:6. And there was a song written about it, a more contemporary song. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. And we trust things will go well for your ministry, Cheryl. Thank you for
Thank you.
time to do this, and
thank you for asking.
and telling us a little bit about Glenburn, about your ministry there, and about another part of the world. And I just pray that God will bless you as you continue there. And
Thank you.
And greetings from Eastminster United Church in Belleville, Ontario, which is right in between Toronto and Ottawa.
Okay.
Toronto and Montreal, one of the two. Anyway.
Well, thank you.
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie.